So, I finally completed my living dex after many years and thousands of hours of gameplay. This includes not only all 1025 individual Pokémon, but all of their alternative forms as well. But it's really not that impressive. Other than this brief video of me showing it off, I never actually recorded any of it. I could do it all again, but lots of people have already done it before. It's not original anymore. I need to find a way to make it unique, more difficult, and of course, more miserable. In this challenge, I will be completing the entire National Pokédex in Pokédex order. The rules are simple. I must catch every Pokémon in existence in Pokédex order. I can use any games in the series, but I am never allowed to use traded Pokémon that are from existing save files. All Pokémon must be caught using fresh save files newly created during this challenge. They don't all need to be contained within one place at the same time, as this will not be a living dex. They just need to be obtained at some point during the challenge. Now, this may seem a bit confusing at first, so the best thing to do is to simply show you what happened. So let's just dive right into the challenge and begin this painful journey. I started with Fire Red and Leaf Green, and although I could have also used Red or Blue, I decided on the GBA games due to quality of life changes and overall nicer graphics. Starting with Leaf Green, I was of course forced to choose Bulbasaur as my starter, and it would be my companion for a very long time. However, I don't have any complaints because Bulbasaur is by far my favourite of the three. You can probably already tell though that this challenge is going to be a harsh one, especially at the very beginning, as I won't be allowed to catch any Pokémon until I've fully evolved 3 starter Pokémon. Therefore, I have cut down the footage substantially in order to prevent the video from being 30 hours long, and I would rather my first video not turn people away just by looking at the length. However, the start of the game was as per normal, after getting my starter. Beat my rival, get Oak's parcel, do a bit of grinding, return to the lab, give Oak the parcel, get the Pokédex. Nothing too exciting. I decided to forego any more grinding for now to see if I could just solo the rival with a Bulbasaur, but instead I embarrassed myself by losing the second rival fight, which was definitely not my finest moment. It was also, hopefully not, a sign of things to come. After a bit of grinding on Pidgeys, Rattatas and Bugcatchers, Bulbasaur evolved into Ivysaur, and I finally had something resembling progress. I then returned for revenge, using the over-leveled Ivysaur to completely destroy my rival, and then after that did the same to Brock's team to get my first badge. I then swept the entirety of Route 3 and Mount Moon, making sure to pick up the Dome fossil at the end, which will come in handy much later. I ran around and grinded for ages on Route 4, until Ivysaur was a high enough level that it couldn't possibly lose to any of the upcoming battles, defeating Misty along the way, and beating more trainers until it gained enough EXP to evolve into Venusaur. Unfortunately, this was the easiest grind, as it's the only one of the 3 to evolve at level 32 instead of 36. Once evolved, I beat my rival and switched to Fire Red, and we won't be seeing Leaf Green again for quite a while. I chose Charmander this time and followed the exact same process as last time, beating all the same trainers and training on all the same wild Pokémon, evolving Charmander into Charmeleon, and after the evolution I gave Brock another beatdown, picked up the Helix fossil from Mount Moon, and then did a lot of grinding. But you didn't come here to watch me grind, you came here because the algorithm was kind to me. Or you were one of the people who I forced to sit down and watch this against your will. Either way, after completing routes 24 and 25 and a long grinding session, I picked up more rare candies and evolved Charmeleon into Charizard. And you'll be seeing a lot of it throughout this video. Also, don't worry, I won't sit you through every single slow evolution animation. Later on it's going to be so fast you won't even be able to keep up. Anyway, starting a temporary new game, I chose Squirtle, and I won't even bother getting into the small details. I evolved Squirtle into Wartortle, and then evolved that into Blastoise. And that's all you need to know. A very well spent few hours of my time. I then immediately reset without saving, obliterating that Blastoise from existence forever, and went back to the original Fire Red save. On the SS Anne, I defeated my rival with my overpowered Charizard, got the cut HM, beat Lieutenant Surge, and then decided it was finally time to start catching Pokémon. So, heading into Viridian Forest, I excitedly came across a Caterpie, finally getting to do something other than grind, and caught it. This was truly a momentous occasion, one which felt like a massive relief. Oh, that's not good. Oh dear. So this was not how I was expecting things to go, and the thought of having to catch more than 1,000 more Pokemon was making me consider quitting altogether. I mean, if I'm having this much trouble with a Caterpie, how am I going to manage to catch legendaries later? But then I just said fuck it, and caught it. After this I very quickly evolved into Metapod, and then into Butterfree after a short grind. Keeping up the momentum, Weedle was next. After a quick stop off to get the Old Rod, Bike Voucher and Bicycle, I evolved into Kakuna, and after a quick switch training session, into Beedrill. Pidgey was next, which I actually caught easily, and it was a quick evolution into Pidgeotto. However, not so quick to evolve into Pidgeot. However, once reaching level 36, I hopped over to the Celadon department store for some stones, got the HM for Fly from the secret house, and then I caught Rattata. Lovely. Then I got the tea from Celadon Mansion, and that reminds me actually, I'll be back in a minute. Apologies for the delay. I entered the Rocket Hideout, beat Giovanni, and got the Sylph Scope. After a few battles against some of the Celadon gym trainers, Rattata finally evolved into Raticate, which means I was allowed to catch Spearow. After getting that and clearing out the Celadon gym and defeating Erica, and doing a little bit more grinding, Spearow evolved into Fearow. And then I caught Ekans and evolved into Arbok after a short grind. Back to Viridian Forest, and after a while of searching I caught Pikachu, and then remembering that I have caught 25 out of 1025, I died a little inside. Not looking forward to Gen 9. I then immediately used a Thunderstone to evolve into Raichu. After fixing my voice up a bit, I swapped games for some version exclusives, finally getting to add to my Leaf Green repertoire. I caught myself a Sandshrew, which would later become a mainstay on the team. I did catch it. There we go. Using it extensively, it finally evolved into Sandslash. And then I was allowed to catch Nidoran female. Staying in Leaf Green due to it being much more common here than its male counterpart, I did eventually get a hold of it, evolving that into Nidorina after a lot of switch training, and then I used one of the Moonstones I picked up earlier to evolve that into Nidoqueen. Then I decided to go ahead and beat Lieutenant Surge, and also cleared out Rock Tunnel. Back in Fire Red, I caught Nidoran male, then beat my rival in Pokemon Tower, with it getting enough EXP to evolve into Nidorino, then Nidoking immediately afterwards. Returning to Mount Moon, I did an unnecessarily long hunt for Clefairy, using a Moonstone straight after catching it to evolve it into Clefable. Then after switching back to Leaf Green, I thought I may as well just progress as far as I can, so I swept through a lot of the same locations I had already done in Fire Red, then caught Vulpix, fed it a Firestone to get Ninetales. I then caught Jigglypuff, using my last remaining Moonstone to evolve it into Wigglytuff. Then it was everyone's favourite Zubat, which I shared EXP for in the Pokemon Tower to evolve into Golbat. It also attempted to evolve into Crobat multiple times later, but we can't do that just yet. I got the Pokeflute from Mr. Fuji and then caught an Oddish, beat some of Silco to get it to evolve into Gloom, and then gave it a Leaf Stone to evolve into Vileplume. Paris was next, and after a bit of grinding I got it to evolve into Parasect. And this unexpectedly became another mainstay on the team. And then I didn't catch Snorlax because it's number 143, but they give you 2, so it doesn't matter. Venonat was next, and more Silph switch training got it into Venomoth. The confused Sylph employees saw me leave yet again so I could go mole hunting, catching Diglett and Dugtrio in the wild. Finding Dugtrio was a relief because evolving it is a very slow process. Then there was Meowth, and not long after it evolved into Persian. Then, after a little stop off at Fuchsia City, I powered through the Safari Zone to get the Surf HM. Using this I was able to catch a Psyduck, evolving it later into Golduck. Then I caught Mankey and beat the rest of Silph along with Giovanni himself, not quite gaining enough EXP to evolve it, but I did at least make a bit more progress in the story at last. Clearing out some of Sabrina's gym did allow me to evolve it into Primeape. Then there was Growlithe, and after catching it, it was immediately forced to evolve into Arcanine. I later realised I'd forgotten to pick up the Good Rod and Super Rod, along with giving the Warden his golden teeth to get the Strength HM, and with the rods in hand I was able to catch a Poliwag, followed by 3 Poliwhirls, and of course one of them was destined to become a Poliwrath. Next was Abra, and I needed 2 of these, keeping one for later, and evolving the other into Kadabra after a very short grind. Then I connected my 2 Game Boy Advances that I was definitely using with 2 real wireless adapters, totally not just having 2 emulator windows open at once. And through this method I traded Kadabra into Leaf Green, evolving it into Alakazam. Unfortunately, with it sitting at level 16, it would have needed a massive amount of grinding to make it useful for me, and I was not willing to do that. Then I caught Mashop, and at this point I had obtained more than 50 Pokemon in Fire Red, giving me the holy grail of all completion runs, the EXP share. Then I evolved Mashop into Machoke, and after another cheeky little trade, it evolved into Machamp. Staying in Leaf Green, I caught Bellsprout and Weepinbell, evolving the latter into Victreebel with a Leaf Stone. Back to Fire Red, I finally decided to make my way to Cinnabar Island, catching a Tentacool on the way, which just took way longer than it should have. I recorded this ages ago, and looking back on the footage I keep asking my past self why I was so terrible. Anyway, I completed the Pokemon Mansion, beat Blaine, and accepted Bill's request to travel to one island. I talked to Celio, however you pronounce his name. Surfed about for a while until I found a Tentacruel to catch, actually caught it relatively quickly, then powered through the Savai Islands quests. There we go. Which involves talking to a guy whose daughter has gone missing, then single-handedly beating up a biker gang, heading into a forest to save a child, saving her by running away, because 23 other Pokemon need to be caught first. And after all that, I don't get any tangible reward, just a pat on the back and thank you from Cilio. And with that, I buggered off back to the mainland and caught myself a Geodude. Then I remembered I forgot to pick up Rock Smash at the Ember Spa, so I did just that. After a bit of grinding, it was evolved into Graveler, and then heading back into the trade centre, I actually recorded the wrong game. So you don't get to see the evolution into Golem, because I really do hold myself to the highest of standards. Heading back to one island yet again, I caught both Ponyta and Rapidash because I was getting sick of grinding to stupidly high levels. Then I did every single thing I just told you again, but in Leaf Green. And I also caught a Slowpoke and a Slowbro since they don't exist in the Fire Red universe. I actually almost accidentally used a Master Ball on it as well. I caught another Spearow, which will be a surprise tool we need for later. For now though, I took a trip over to the power plant for Magnemite and Magneton, because, you know, fuck grinding. Using my pal Spearow, I took it to a house where I did the first of 4 very unfair trades. Unfair on the person initiating them, that is. Getting the only Farfetch seemingly in existence at this point in time. Then there was Dojo, and unfortunately there is no Wild Dodrio in the game, so more fun grinding. Then, entering Seafoam Islands, I caught myself both Seal and Dugong back to back. Then I remembered I never actually talked to Sphelio again in Leaf Green, and while I was on that game I picked up Grimer, and after a stupid amount of searching, Muck as well. Next there was Shelder, and yet another Waterstone later it became Cloyster. Back in the Ghost Tower, I was finally allowed to add Ghosts to my collection, finding Ghastly quickly and spending quite a while finding Haunter. But after catching both, I was able to complete the last of the 4 Generation 1 trade Evos, evolving it into Gengar. Onix was next, followed by Drowsy, and then to prevent any grinding I also caught a Wild Hypno in the Berry Forest. And then crab fishing time had come at last, as I reeled in both a Krabby and a Kingler, the latter of which took way too long. And now for a monumental occasion as I caught Pokemon number 100, Voltorb, followed up by also catching one of the Static Electrode encounters in the power plant. Running around the Berry Forest, I then caught an Execute, giving it a Leaf Stone to evolve into Executor, and then yet again spent more time in the Tower of Terror to quickly catch Cubone. Also, there's a little secret here. If you use the Item Finder in this exact spot, you get the Soothe Bell, which will be useful for some of the Gen 2 evolutions. After demolishing Sabrina's team and doing a little bit more grinding, Cubone evolved into Marowak. I beat the Fighting Dojo and made sure to choose Hitmonlee, and then swapped over to Leaf Green and did the same thing, but this time making sure to choose Hitmonchan. I then picked up my Golduck from earlier and did another in-game trade, this time for a Lickitung. Sorry, I mean Mark. Back into the mansion, I caught Coughing, which was just so unnecessarily difficult, like why Why am I like this? Why is my past self? Me from August just did not know what he was doing. But I caught it eventually, and that's all that matters. Next was wheezing, and if you think I failed badly at coughing, just watch. It's rare as hell, and it just kept killing itself, so I just gave up and trained coughing to evolve it instead. Which wasn't fun, but oh well. Safari Zone time now, and I caught myself Rhyhorn, and the number stayed at 111 for quite a while because there were no wild Rhydons anywhere, and you need to get it all the way to level 42 to evolve it. Now, if this was Sword and Shield, or, you know, Scarlet and Violet, would be very easy, but no such luck. So anyway, I swept Giovanni and Blue, made my way into Victor Road, did all the annoying puzzles, beat every trainer, all with Rhyhorn in my party with the EXP share, and when I reached the Elite Four, I realised I was channeling my inner child because I almost exclusively used my starter because I was not paying any attention to the battles, only the catching. And I paid dearly for it, not even being able to beat Lorelei. So I ran through the game, beating every single trainer that I hadn't fought yet, using the VS Seeker when necessary as well, eventually actually getting Rhyhorn to its required level 42, and evolving it into Rhydon, which took way too long. And then it was time for the segment which drove me to insanity more than any other point in this whole journey. Welcome to me attempting to catch a Chansey. It took a while. Like, way too long. So, as you can imagine, that was a bit of a kick in the teeth. From this point on, I kept finding Chansey and failing to catch them, trying various methods that did not work. But I persevered. I tried again, and again, and again, and it just kept fleeing. And finally. A little bonus as well for my troubles. I checked and it turned out to be holding a lucky egg, which is a 5% chance on top of its 4% chance of appearing, giving it a 0.2% or 1 in 500 chance. Very lucky indeed. Oh yeah, and I also caught Tangela. And then I was back in the zone again for another frustrating encounter, this time Kangaskhan. Somehow this actually gave me more of a headache than Chansey did. The Gen 3 Safari Zone just isn't it. So after many failed attempts, along with a cipher that I'm not allowed to catch yet, taunting me at one point, I did eventually catch it, with only 5 Safari balls to go. And with that, I had actually done the majority of the hard encounters now, and to celebrate I did some relaxing fishing down at the docks, catching myself Horsey, Seadra, Goldeen, Seeking and Staryu, immediately evolving said Staryu into Starmie with a Waterstone. Once my fishing trip had come to an end, it was back to business. And that meant another trade being done, trading my Abra for his Mr. Mime. Then I turned into a compulsive gambler for a while, scrounging for as many coins as I could get in preparation for later purchases. I also just went ahead and traded Venusaur to Fire Red because I just didn't want to do any grinding. I had just suffered the trauma of the Safari Zone beforehand, I couldn't do it. And so, with a grand total of 2 good Pokemon in my party, I absolutely destroyed the entire Elite Four and also beat the champion with no problem at all. And after, allegedly, 55 hours, I had beaten the main story in Fire Red. So, what was next? Well, since I had well over 60 Pokemon caught, I was allowed to get to the National Dex and gain access to the rest of the Savai Islands. Of course, I can't be catching any Gen 2 Pokemon yet, but I was glad to finally have all of that unlocked. For now, I just bought enough coins to afford a Scyther so I didn't have to do any more Safari Zone hunting. and when I checked it in the PC, it wasn't shiny. Withdrawing one of my Poliwhirl pals, I traded it to this old man for a Jinx, and after that I went to the power plant to catch Electabuzz. And then I traded both starters into Leaf Green because I just love to go out of my way to be lazy. So I, again, in Leaf Green, beat Giovanni, completed Victor Road, beat Lorelei, Bruno, Agatha, Lance and Blue, then immediately went to Mount Ember to catch Magmar. And then I spent all of my money so I could buy a pincer to alleviate a Safari Zone grind, and it wasn't shiny, in case you were wondering. Then came another Safari Pokemon, but thankfully I was blessed this time, catching the first Tauros I found. Thankfully I only had to catch one, as this is not an Ash percent speedrun, so I was able to quickly move on and catch Magikarp. And then spend ages trying to catch Gyarados because I was too stubborn to just switch to my sleeper. Returning to Silph again, I got the Gift Lapras, which was not shiny, and then I caught a Ditto, which will soon be very handy. I also caught one in Leaf Green off camera, as it will be needed in both for part 2. Making my way to the secret room atop Celadon Mansion, I took the Gift Eevee and then I evolved it into Vaporeon with a Water Stone. Also went into the same room in Leaf Green, but this time evolved it into Jolteon with a Thunderstone. However, you only get one Eevee per game, and this is where Ditto came into play. But before expanding the decks any further, I just decided in Leaf Green to progress the Savai Island story as much as I could be bothered to, beating various trainers, especially the rich ones, and obtaining the ruby in the process. I also did the same thing in Fire Red because, you know, I had to. Then after that, I deposited Ditto and Vaporeon into the daycare centre. And fun fact about Vaporeon, so after hatching I got another Eevee which was promptly evolved into Flareon with a Firestone. After that, in Leaf Green, I used the money I squeezed from the rich folk in Five Island to buy coins to afford Porygon, which was not shiny. Then I revived the Helix fossil into Omanite, which I forgot to record. Then I grinded it into Omastar. In the game where I chose the Dome fossil, I did the same thing to get Computo, but this time I actually did record it. And then I did the same amount of grinding as I did for Omastar, but this time I actually decided to use this as an opportunity to progress the story instead of just using a combination of the Daycare and VS Seeker. I also found the Sea Incense, which I will need later. And so after beating Icefall Cave and getting the Sapphire, or rather getting the Sapphire stolen from me, I beat the Rocket Warehouse and gave both back to Celio. In the process, Kabuto evolved into Kabutops. I then gave the old Amber to the scientist, getting me Aerodactyl. I had gotten Charizard to a much higher level and it was ready to sweep the entire game along with Venusaur, and thus traded it back to Fire Red. Then it was time to catch the Snorlax that I left alone before, which was much easier than I expected. Then it was finally time for the legendaries. First, a stop off at Steefoam Islands to catch Articuno, which was caught in a single Ultra Ball. Next up, Zapdos in the power plant, and this one also didn't take too much hassle to catch. Only had to knock it out a few dozen times. And finally, atop Mount Ember we have Moltres, which was actually not too difficult either, only 3 Ultra Balls used in total. After that, I relapsed and started gambling again, using my winnings to buy Dratini, which was going to be the hardest grind yet. I just traded it to Fire Red for faster leveling and used it on my team for completing the rest of the Sapphire Islands quests for the second time. It eventually evolved into Dragonair, and after returning the Ruby and Sapphire and also catching another Gloom for later use, I then went back to the Pokemon League to defeat the Elite Four's newly upgraded teams for good EXP. After a few wins, Dragonair evolved into Dragonite, and I was so relieved that this was nearly over. I mean, it's not over at all, I still have another 8 generations to get through, and this is probably the easiest one, but just let me have my win while it lasts. So, with 149 Pokemon in hand, and the post-game story completed, it was time to enter Cerulean Cave, where I was able to encounter Mewtwo. And I, of course, did what any self-respecting person would do and just chucked the Master Ball because there was no way I was putting any more effort in than I already had. And there we have it, all 150 first generation Pokemon finally caught in order without ever breaking the chain. Oh, you thought I forgot. So, the only way without glitches to get Mew without breaking my streak is buying a Pokeball Plus that has not been used yet and transferring the Mew to a Let's Go game. Yeah, I think I'll save my money instead. I started a new save file in Pokemon Red and performed a classic glitch that would save me about £90. The prerequisites are that I must have an Abra and must not have beaten Misty yet. Having beaten Nugget Bridge, I walk on over to the patch of grass to the left, walk towards the trainer in the grass, and before he has a chance to notice me, I open the menu, have Abra use Teleport, and he does notice me, but I leave before he has a chance to initiate the battle. After teleporting, I head into the Cerulean Gym and battle the first swimmer trainer, hence why you need to have not beaten Misty yet. After winning that battle, head back into Nugget Bridge, and upon entering the new area the menu will open. After closing the menu, a wild battle will occur and Mew will appear. And after a few failed attempts, Mew was finally caught. And that's all 151 Generation 1 Pokemon caught in Pokédex order. Thank you very much for watching. I have no idea if this video will ever gain any traction, but the YouTube algorithm may be kind to me. And if so, I will definitely make a part 2, where I continue the challenge and get all of the Gen 2 Pokemon. I actually recorded the footage for this back in August and then had absolutely no motivation to actually edit it. But then my friend Liam told me, no, you should edit it. So I did. So thanks Liam. Regardless, I am quite happy with the finished product and I'm glad it got uploaded, even if it is only ever seen by my 15 subscribers. But anyway, if I do end up making a part 2, I shall see you then.